Good morning. Day 31, 1st of October. A front came through last night and the wind blew like crazy, but I was protected down here underneath the trees, so I got to hear it. It woke me up, but didn't do anything to the tent. Hopefully it's supposed to calm down as the day progresses, so hopefully it's not too bad when I get out there this morning. I'm going to the Herbert Hoover National Historic Site. It's about an hour and a half away, south of here, and then I'm going to start making my way east again towards Indiana Dunes State Park, which I've stayed at several times before on other cross-country trips. Absolutely gorgeous day for day 31, 53 degrees. This is a little on the chilly side, but my electric jacket and my heated grips really make a difference. So I'm going to visit this Herbert Hoover National Historic Site. Other than seeing it on the map, I know nothing about it, and I don't know that I've ever read about Herbert Hoover. And then there's to the east of that, as I make my way to the southern shore of Lake Michigan, is birthplace of Ronald Reagan. So I'm going to go stop by and see that as well. Good sized piece of equipment, not huge though. I've seen a lot bigger than that. Herbert Hoover Park. It's a museum and library like Reagan. Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum. Toy train that belonged to Herbert Hoover as a kid. He carved his name in the seat at Stanford University.
Right and decent thing to do.
I hope is for the future of our country.
First presidential telephone was installed by Hoover. His presidency started 8 months before the Great Depression, so ultimately he was blamed for it. Some clothing from his wife Lou, some books written by Herbert Hoover, gifts given to him over his 50-year life of public service. He lived in the Waldorf Astoria after his presidency for some period of time. He liked fishing. Herbert Hoover and his wife Lou. She died 20 years before he did. He lived till he was 90. I'm going to make a quick ride over where the house is that he was born in, which is on the same grounds here. Well, I learned a lot about Herbert Hoover. He's quite a humanitarian. He took the blame for the Depression, even though it started only 8 months after he became president, but the American public just wouldn't see it any other way. So 4 years later, he was run out of the White House, and FDR took over in his stead. First president of the United States born west of the Mississippi, Herbert Hoover. House was built 1871. This is the back porch and the stove that they would run into the house during the wintertime, keep things warm. His father was a blacksmith. I learned a tremendous amount going to that library. That's it for Iowa. Here is the Mississippi River. Look how big it is all the way up here. Magnificent. What a river. I am entering Illinois. Great state of Illinois. This is where Ronald Reagan was born. And I am on my way to see Ronald Reagan's birthplace. Let's see what Illinois has to say about itself. Welcome to Illinois, the land of Lincoln. And it's still windy here in Illinois. The only good thing is that the corn hasn't been cut down yet, and where there's corn, gives some shelter because it's fairly close to the road. So here's a piece of farm equipment. That's a dude, huh? He waved at me. You gotta love the farmers. They're the friendliest sorts. Birthplace of Ronald Reagan. Tampico, 800 people. Birthplace of President Ronald Reagan. I rode right by it. Should have known with the American flag. Birthplace of President Ronald Reagan. Let's go see what the sign has to say. Look at those trees moving with the wind. When is this wind going to stop? It's the second day of heavy winds. Alright, onwards to Indiana Dunes State Park, where I hope to stay the night. Lots of windmills. Traffic is really ugly. I am going from Illinois into Indiana, so I'm getting closer. More to discover in Indiana. Indiana Dunes State Park. Stayed here twice before. It's getting late. It's almost 6 o'clock. The sun is setting. I gotta get a campsite, set that up, and have dinner. I'd forgotten how expensive this campground is. $36. So they charge both an entrance fee and then a camping fee. Indiana Dunes State Park. Site number 73. I think that is Lake Michigan in the background roaring because of the strong winds. The waves are probably pounding on the sand. Dinner night's pretty simple. Sushi, bagel, banana, sweet tea, and a donut with some milk for dessert. Just don't have a lot of time. The sun is setting right now. Hello, it's day 32. I am headed towards Michigan. There's an air museum up there I want to go see. It was a nice night here at the campground, Indiana Dunes. I'm going up to Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is where this museum is located. It's about an hour and a half ride. Perfect day. A little on the chilly side, but I'll take that over the heat. 65 degrees Fahrenheit and not a cloud in the sky, and the wind is dying down finally. You really appreciate still air after it gets beaten up by the Great Plains winds. It's just wonderful. Leaving Indiana. Welcome to pure Michigan. I had been to that Indiana Dunes State Park. The woman told me 4 times. I actually recognized her. That tells you you've been on a motorcycle too long. I also, by crossing the Michigan border, lost an hour, so I'm now in the Eastern time zone. Same time zone that I live in. Stop, scrub the bike down, service the chain. It's looking the best it's looked in a couple of weeks. Even washed my dry bag. So, chain's about as clean as it's been. I can try to keep the power wash away from it so I don't blow the grease out of the O-rings. Ready to keep moving on my trip. Air Zoo, the total flight experience. That's a nice looking museum. Actually, you have two different buildings here. This is 1961. This is a Ford Trimotor. Excelsior, 1300 cc. The Keith Baby Bullet, 1933. Traveler Mystery Ship, 1929. This is the 1930s Waco INF. Waco BPF 1937. Child 24-K by Hollywood Stars, 1930s. Curtis Robin, 1928. Howard GH-2 Nightingale, used during World War II. On loan from the U.S. Marine Corps Museum. This is a B-25J from World War II, type that was used in the Doolittle raid over Tokyo, Japan, America's first attack on Japan, post the attack on Pearl Harbor. Top turret. BMW R69, 1956. This is on loan from the Smithsonian, a V1, put into service mid-1944 by Hitler. Famous Norden bomb site. Kept super secret by the Americans. P-47D Thunderbolt. Boy, they're really well maintained. Only 3 of these Wright XP-55s were built because 2 of them crashed. An experimental plane. This is a Bell P-39Q. Had a liquid-cooled engine used a lot by the Soviet Union, but manufactured, I believe, by the United States. Really nice museum. Douglas A4D2 Skyhawk. Carrier landing. McDonnell Douglas FA-18A. I've seen these before. These are so cool. They still look good, even today. First combat mission, 1986. An SR-71. First time I've been able to look into a cockpit of one. Here's the aft cockpit. Here's the board cockpit. This is a flight suit for the SR-71 pilots. This is the Crusader F-8J, 1955 to 1989. It's got that wing that tilts back so the pilot can see the approach on a carrier landing. F-14 Tomcat, one of the coolest aircraft ever made. This is the Bell Sea Cobra pilot and a gunner seat. These are surgical tools used on Guadalcanal, and down below it, barbed wire used on Guadalcanal. Some Japanese material from World War II. This is another exhibit hall. The Wildcat. Panels are off, which is kind of interesting, so you can see the engine and the innards. This is the C-47. Used extensively in World War II, including to drop paratroopers into Normandy. 20,000 Allied paratroopers jumped on D-Day. F-6 Hellcat. I've said it before in other museums, but the Corsair is still my favorite World War II aircraft. The gull wings. Dauntless dive bomber. Douglas Sky Raider. Built for World War II, but used in Korea and Vietnam. Apparently it could take quite a bit of enemy hits and survive. Famous clicker. Used by paratroopers to identify one another in the dark. Paint is impeccable. It's probably better than it ever was on the original. Showing the glider being towed. It's very cool. Studebaker, 2.5 ton carry troop and supplies. They made 194,000 in South Bend, Indiana, and another 22,000 in Michigan. There's a whole section related to space. It's a Cowling, an A-10 Warthog hit by a surface-to-air missile during Operation Iraqi Freedom. This is where they're doing restorations, and they have some engines and things on display. The F-117A Nighthawk. Still pretty futuristic looking. It's hard to believe it's sitting here in a museum now. This is the GBU-27 laser guided missile used in Operation Desert Storm. Hits 70% of its targets. M61 Vulcan rotary cannon. Grumman Cougar entered service in 1956. An Indian 441, 1941. Well, that's a very fine museum. It's got an unusual name with zoo in it, the Air Zoo Experience. And they're talking to one of the docents. Sounds like they may be changing that name. There's some pressure to make it a little clearer in terms of what it really is. That it's not a zoo, but it's in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and the people that originally set it up many years ago liked that name. But some really fine exhibits, and apparently they do restoration work there for the Naval Air Museum down in Pensacola, Florida, as well as the Air Force Museum in Ohio. So the restoration guys do apparently very good work. I am headed to Ann Arbor, Michigan, visit with my brother, and I will not record the next day or so until I'm on the road again. I'm in Ann Arbor, and when I resume my journey tomorrow or the following day, I will be back.